Hi you guys, my name is Olivia. Thanks for joining me on another video. I am a stay-at-home mom of 3. I homeschool my 10-year-old son and my 6-year-old daughter. I also have a 7-month-old daughter, and I share homeschool things and mommyhood things and clean living, that sort of thing. Today I'm going to try and do a quick video of my daughter's favorite chapter books and series. She is technically a first grader. I would say that she's been working on these for the last year or so, and I don't love saying, you know, my daughter's at this grade level or that grade level. I know a lot of homeschooling parents, that's sometimes hard for us. We don't always assess where our kids are at each subject and their learning level or what grade level they're at. And same goes for reading. She is a pretty fluent reader, but I think that these are really great beginning chapter books for kiddos, and a lot of this also is aimed towards things that I think my daughter would have liked. There's definitely, all of these books are for anybody, right? But there's a lot of some girlier things. There's a couple that were my son's loved favorite beginning reader books in here as well, and so I will be sharing those too. I also want to preface with, we don't exclude all magic in our house. I know that I have a lot of Christ-based followers and I share a lot of things in that circle as well. I think that whatever you have convictions for in your family, that you should absolutely make your home look like that and feel like that. And I think that's great for you guys if it's different from our family. We don't say no to all magic. I also try really hard to make sure that our books, even if there is like a sarcastic or a sassy character, that they actually have a good heart and they don't just like get away with being ill-mannered or unkind. That if someone puts their foot in their mouth or maybe says something that isn't super sweet, or maybe is ignorant on a topic, that it is then taught that, you know, actually that's not how we speak to people, or you know, families are different from us in this way. And so, yeah, I don't love like the nasty, like I'm in a bad mood and then the parents are just exasperated with their kids. I don't love books like that for my kiddos. So I try hard not to include anything like that in our reading. Again, unless, like I said, there is some sort of resolution to it or it's addressed somehow. Okay, I'm a chatter. I'm gonna get into it. Most of these books I make sure that, because for my daughter as well, there's not too much text on a page. That can be really intimidating to open up a book and just see a page full of text, especially smaller text. So most of these have quite large size, good size text. There's illustrations that break up most of these. All of them have illustrations in them, but to what extent, it depends on the book series. So the chapters are shorter, and I also love series. I can do a video of just like solo books if anybody's interested in them. There's something about a series, and I know if you're an adult reader as well, when you read one book and you fall in love with the characters, you fall in love with the story, and then you find out, oh my gosh, this is a, you know, a trilogy. This has 7 books in it. This has more books in it. It's really, I know I love when I find a series that I'm like, oh good, I don't have to say goodbye to these characters or this world yet. So anyway, there's something about the series where for kiddos, if they read the first book and they really love it, knowing that they're going to then enjoy the rest of the series is a good feeling, because that's another book in their hands. That's more story and reading that they're exposed to. Not that you can't find that filtering through solo books, definitely not, but these are my favorite series specifically for lower elementary school aged kiddos. I am sure many people have heard of a lot of these books. A lot of them are very popular for a reason, especially in the early reading circles. So maybe you guys will see some of your favorites in here. Maybe you guys will see something new. Something that most people I'm sure have is the Peter Rabbit Library, the Beatrix Potter books. These are the original and authorized edition. These are so sweet. I will say, I think even though these are, you know, like childhood based, like written, the audience is for kiddos, this series I would say has the most mature language in it out of all of them. Obviously it's lovely language, and the way that it's written, because it is so classical and old school, is beautiful. But I will say that there are some tougher words in here if they are reading them on their own. There are some really beautiful pictures that I'm sure you are familiar with if you know about the Beatrix Potter books and the Peter Rabbit world. That being said, I think there's so much magic in these books and they're so nostalgic, and I think that boys and girls can relate to a lot of the characters. If you are familiar with them, there are often a lot of naughty characters in here. So yes, absolutely love this series. Another series that I don't have in front of me, so I don't know if it wound up at a grandparent's house or what, or where it is, but I could not find it, is the Brambly Hedge series, which is very reminiscent of the Peter Rabbit series, where it's a really like timeless series of woodland creatures. I would highly recommend that series as well. Okay, next in the early reading circles are the Sophie Mouse books. There's even a few more Sophie Mouse books in this that we do not have yet. These were the very first books that I bought in a set for like early reading for my daughter were the Beatrix Potter books, but those are really family books too. These ones are the ones that I purchased first, where I was thinking of her, something that she would enjoy, and it is these Sophie Mouse books. These are very, very popular. I'm sure many people have heard of them. It follows this little mouse named Sophie and all of her other woodland creature friends, a lot of mouse-based main characters that you're gonna see as a pattern, apparently. Sophie Mouse and her woodland creature friends, and they all go to school in this one-room schoolhouse with kiddos of all sorts of ages. What I like about this is, as sweet and as kind as she is, she's still a little girl, and she comes up against like not knowing when she should say something or if she should say something, or maybe sometimes accidentally like judging someone when she didn't need to, and having a little sibling and getting annoyed with the sibling, that sort of thing. And it's not, I don't know for any of you guys out there, but for me, one of my most despised literary tropes is the golden girl, or the main character that can do no wrong. If anybody has a problem with her, or the main character in general, it's because the other person is the one with the problem and everybody loves them. And not that she has any enemies in this, but she very much comes across some problems here or there that, you know, are addressed with, oh man, that was a lesson to be learned, or her parents say something, that sort of thing. So I love these. And in one of the stories, there's even a homeschooled character, which I love. So let's look inside of these real fast. They are illustrated inside. They're not in color. They're in black and white, but they're these really sweet pictures. And as you can see, the text is pretty big. It's not tiny, tiny little text, and they're broken up with a lot of illustrations. You're not going to find very, very many pages where it's just a page, like both the entire spread is a page of text. I don't know if there's any of them like that. There's always some sort of illustration that's breaking it up. The chapters are nice and short, so it's approachable and it's not too intimidating to get through it. Really, really, really love Sophie Mouse. All right, I know not everybody loves Fancy Nancy. We love Fancy Nancy. We loved her in her stories before the TV show. We also love the TV show. If you're not familiar with Nancy, and I'm sure most people are, she is a little girl who loves all things fancy. She loves being extra and accessories and dancing and rich language and just seeming fancy like that. She shares a lot of similarities with my daughter in that sort of area. Another thing about Nancy is she also comes up against, you know, like judgment issues where she will sometimes put her foot in her mouth and like say something that may not be kind or maybe is judgy in some way, and it's never just like brushed under the rug or let go. Her parents say something, her sibling says something, there's always a lesson to be learned. And I do love that she's like a little sarcastic and a little bit prim and just the tiniest bit sassy. I think it's endearing. Again, when it's a little too much, there is some sort of, you know, like step in, that sort of thing. So she comes across issues with her siblings. She comes across issues sometimes with, you know, friends, that sort of thing. We love Nancy Clancy. Again, shorter chapters, not as much writing on a page that would be really super intimidating. There are some spreads where there's more text on the page than others, though the text is somewhat large and the chapters are short. There are a lot of illustrations though. This one says that it's for ages 6 to 10. All right, this is the Heartwood Hotel. This is the first one, the Heartwood Hotel series. This is a mouse main character. The very first book, it starts out with this little mouse gets caught in a storm and she runs into a safe open spot, and it happens to be the Heartwood Hotel, and she comes across also some characters, some little woodland creatures who not everybody always gets along, her included, and there's other characters that have problems, and you know, she learns kind of how to like confront those problems and the interactions with other characters. And this one does have, there are some spreads where there are no illustrations, and the illustrations that do come up, some of them are smaller. And the text on here is not as big as in some of the other books. These are really, really sweet stories though. My daughter absolutely adores this series. She loves them so much. The Heartwood Hotel is a fun one. All right, these have been around forever. These were some of my son's very first chapter book readers too, and it's the Zoey and Sassafras series. It's about this little girl and her kitty Sassafras, and a bunch of magical creatures wind up at her door, and she helps heal them and solve problems. And she isn't afraid to get dirty. She isn't afraid of yucky things. She isn't afraid of bugs. And she does experiments and she solves problems, and I love Zoey and Sassafras. It's so much fun. There are some little illustrations and then some bigger ones, but mostly smaller ones that break up the different pages, and the text is not itty bitty, but it's a pretty decently large text. There is a little bit more writing on these pages than there are on some of the other books, but they're really easy reads and the chapters are short. I will say she keeps the fact that she can see these magical creatures and her mom as a secret from her dad. In our house, we just have a rule where we don't keep secrets. You're allowed to keep something to yourself or between another person if it's going to be a surprise for another person, and that's safe and that sort of thing. So that was just something that we touched, like that was just kind of like, hey, I got these books for you. They're really sweet. I think you're really gonna like them. There is a secret, and I just want to remind you about how our family does it, and just because we read it in this book is not okay. So that's kind of how I approach a lot of issues that I may see come up in books, because not every single person's gonna think the exact same way as us. And not every single book is written for exactly the way we think, but that's the way that I approached that one issue that I found with these books. Anyway, they're really, really fun. There's a lot of them. I think we have most of them. They're not all here, but love these books. Both of my kiddos like them, and I would highly recommend these. Okay, a couple more that my son really loved and has then excited my daughter, because my son had them and loved them and has passed that love on, are the Pokemon books. Does anybody else have Pokemon obsessed houses like we do? We have a fanatical Pokemon house. So there is more text on these than there are on some of these other books. The text is there's a little bit more and the text is a little bit smaller. The language is really easy though, except for the Pokemon names if you're not familiar with the Pokemon names. My kiddos know what all the Pokemon are, so they can sound out the names, but for the most part, oh, well, there is a word in here that I just opened up, sabotaged. So, but most of them are not like that. They're easier reads. There's only like little illustrations in here though. There's not, if there are full page illustrations, they're very few and far between. So that being said, there still are a lot of illustrations. So these, if you're not familiar with them, they loosely follow they pretty much follow the show, the first season specifically of the Pokemon show. So if your kiddos have watched the show and they kind of know the story already, this is like the books to them. So these are really fun. My son has tons of them. My daughter is reading through them. She really loves them too. These have been around forever and ever. I know that these are a popular series that a lot of people are familiar with. This is the Dragon Master series. Something that I love about this series is that there are girls and boys in the series. There are girl and boy dragons. And we only have through like book 9. I think that there's supposed to be like 20 or something. So I can only say through book 9 are the ones that we have and we are familiar with and that I approve of. I have not read the entire series of it. It says that these are appeals to 1st through 3rd graders, reading level grade 2. Again, I know that that's subjective and doesn't necessarily mean anything to everybody, but there are illustrations on every single one of the pages. There's not just like a spread of pages with just words on both ones. At least like I don't think I've come across it. Like here's about as much text as you'll see on them. The text is large and there are really nice full-size, like pictures in all of these. The names of some of these people are a little bit tricky. They're like, those fun fantasy medieval almost type names. There's problem solving and these kiddos often have to work together to get something to work. You can jump in at the middle of this series, but there is a like subplot that continues the series, so it wouldn't hurt to start at book 1, but you could definitely start in the middle of the series if you just like find book 5 or something. I think that would totally work and you wouldn't be missing much. Okay, these come from the same author. Yes, these come from the same author and we love them both so much. So the first one is the Lighthouse Family, and this is a really, really sweet series about this cat, and she is a lighthouse keeper on the coast, and there are these really light sketched whimsy type illustrations in here, and all of these people kind of blow onto shore and you are meeting these characters because they're animals. So you're meeting these characters as they blow onto shore. I will say that the text is a little bit smaller and there's a little bit more text on each page. Most of the pages are broken up with illustrations though. Like this is a lot of text on a spread, that sort of thing, but the chapters are really short and the story's really sweet. I think that these are so fun. So there's a good amount of books in this series. Again, you're coming across the little critters that wash up or come upon the lighthouse on the shore and that sort of thing. There's, again, a somewhat small subplot that goes along the story, but if you started in the middle, it should be okay. I've never seen these books just like single in the library floating around though. I've only ever seen it together in the series, so it wouldn't hurt, again, to start at book 1. This is from the same author. This is called the Cobble Street Cousins. Book 1 is in Aunt Lucy's kitchen. It follows these 3 cousins and their parents are away for the summer and they're staying with their Aunt Lucy. And this is another one where there is a bit like a small piece of the story that follows them along that you were introduced to in book 1, but you could pick up in the middle of the series if you needed to or wanted to. And I don't think that it would be too bad. This is about middle of the line text and size. The language is sweet and it's not too bad. Like I see the word customer in here. I see the word apartment, cinnamon alongside, and there's these small little illustrations in here that are really sweet, but each of the cousins is different and has their own personality and the way that they approach things, and it's kind of the way that they interact with people on their city block and in their neighborhood. And the people that you were introduced to in book 1 are going to be the main characters that you kind of follow along in the rest of the books. These are really, really sweet. I love these. My daughter has really, really been loving these too. The Lighthouse Family says that it is for ages 6 to 10, and the Cobble Street Cousins says 7 to 10. Okay, 2 more series. So the first one is Grandma's Attic Treasury. I don't have the first book and I don't know where it is, but what it is, the author is actually writing the story that her grandma would tell her stories when she was little. So it's about this little girl, which happens to be the author, that comes across different things and in her grandma's attic, and then she will bring it down and her grandma will be reminded of a story. There are a lot of like things her grandma did that were necessarily like her grandma got into, I wouldn't say she was a troublemaker, but you know, she was a young girl and she needed guidance, and sometimes she wouldn't listen to her parents, and then it was a problem, and then, you know, she was corrected in the right sort of way. So there's a lot of like good values you read through here. I will say this is a little bit slower of a read than the other ones. It's just a little bit slower. It's not as exciting, but it still is really sweet. There is a lot of text in here, I will say though, and not as many illustrations that break up the text, but the language is not too bad in here. It still is, I would say, for elementary school kiddos. So something that's really fun about this series, I'm trying to see what age group it says on here. I'm not sure. Something that I think is really sweet about these stories though is it's talking about the grandma when she's telling her stories about her childhood. It's like in the 19th century, so like the late 1800s, and there's a lot of things that come up where my daughter is like, what is that? And so it's really cool to read from this sort of time period and, you know, teach my daughter something like that in here. So she really loves these two. These ones obviously take her a little bit longer because they're a denser story. There's more text, and like I said, it's a little bit slow, but there's still really sweet stories in here. Okay, the very last one I have to share is something that my mom actually grabbed for my daughter from Costco recently, and it is these puppy tales. My daughter's favorite animals are a puppy and a bunny. So anyway, these are really, really sweet. These are, again, on the denser side. The text is a little bit smaller. There's more text on each page, and there's not very many illustrations, but when you do get to one, they're really sweet and fun. So my daughter has been loving these, and I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to say about them. They're like stories about puppies getting into things and like, you know, problems that the puppy is dealing with and their owners and people around them that they love. But my dog just loves puppies so much. So if you have a daughter or a son that loves puppies, these are a fun read. These ones might take a little bit longer than say like the Sophie Mouse ones or the Zoey and Sassafras ones because it is a little bit denser, longer of a story, that sort of thing. But it's not all girls like that are owners, and the dogs are not all girls. There's boy owners and boy dogs in here too, which again, even if it was just all girls, boys could still read those too, but I did just want to mention that. So these are a really sweet, fun read as well. All right, that's all I pulled out for her favorite series that she has been loving. There's a couple other books that we kind of just started getting into. I didn't bring them out yet because I'm not 100% sure on them. They're not as much as they're not as well loved as these ones have been. But was there anything that I mentioned that you guys really love as well? Or is there something that I haven't mentioned that your kiddos really love to read and go through? I am always on the lookout for new book series for both my son and my daughter. So leave those down below if you have recommendations. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave those in the comments below as well. And yeah, I think that's about it. So I'm gonna wrap up here. Thank you so much for joining me in my video, and I will see you guys next time.